So we have with us Saurabh Mukherjea, Marcellus. Saurabh, your first take.
I think delighted to see the fiscal consolidation. I mean, honestly, without any view on, without getting into market specifics, it's remarkable to see this sort of fiscal consolidation in an election year. And given that this is the year India is making its debut in the global bond markets, I think this will do a power of good for our reputation. It'll bring down the 10-year bond yield. It'll strengthen the rupee. It'll embellish India's credentials as a market. So I was expecting 5.2 fiscal deficit target for 25. The FM has said 5.1.
Yeah.
4.5 was something I was sort of in a way dreaming about for FY26, but
right.
she's promised that, and naturally, therefore, she's pulled back public sector capex. Public sector capex has grown at around 30% per year for the last 3 years.
Absolutely.
She's pulled it back to 11%. But I think that for me was the highlight. What was also interesting was the focus on energy transition. EV charging stations, rooftop solar, EV buses at the state government level. I think there's plenty more there on EV. My reckoning is after the elections, we'll hear plenty more on this theme. And the third theme, which I think has been a popular theme for them, and I think they want to run with it, is affordable housing. So both the PMAY Grameen version and middle class housing. She didn't specifically say what we can expect there, but it looked like they're going to keep on re-emphasizing the housing theme. So from our investments perspective, we've invested plenty in this space, the building material space, in affordable housing. Hopefully we will make more money from that. We've begun our investments in energy transition. So hopefully by the time she spells out the details on the other side of the elections, we'd have made more investments there. And the general fiscal consolidation. That means more space for the RBI governor to cut rates, hopefully relief on the liquidity front for our private sector bank investments.
Sure. Definitely this 5.1% is quite a surprise, because, most people were expecting 5.3, 5.2, 5.1, and that too in an election year is a surprise. I was just talking to Shankar, and he was saying that, he doesn't believe that it will be met. So do you have concerns like that? I mean, is that...
So I was doing the quick maths. So I have to confess, I haven't sat down in front of an Excel spreadsheet just yet. And obviously, when I heard the 5.1, instinctively, I also was a little worried. But then what she said was 45 trillion spending in FY25. So most people, including myself, had sort of thought of a spending figure closer to 50 trillion, 48 trillion, 49 trillion. So if the spending figure is indeed 45 trillion, then 5.1 should be doable. I don't think she has to have unrealistic assumptions on revenue intake. I think the revenue growth numbers will be in the...
So there is overall contraction in the
that's right. So 45 trillion, a sub 50 trillion number, well below 50 trillion number. If she is able to deliver the 45 trillion spending figure and keep it at or below, then I think 5.1 is very doable.
Okay. And this 12%, of course, like you rightly said, in an election year, I mean, how else will you manage a fiscal consolidation path without cutting down on capital expenditure? That should be... did you see anything in the budgets that could trigger, consumption? Because that is the weakest part of GDP so far. One would have expected that, she would have fixed that part so that at least, over the next 1 year, you would get consumption up, then private capex could also accelerate, and it becomes easier for us to go a little easy on public spending and rein in fiscal deficit. So
I think what was interesting was she upfront in her budget speech, she was very clear that we don't want to give entitlements to the poor, right? So this is very similar to a Margaret Thatcher type doctrine, right? Reagan Thatcher doctrine. And over the last 3-4 years, especially after the FY19 elections, NDA2 has been very clear that this is not going to be handouts and SOPs. This is more about direct benefit transfer where it's required. She was emphatic about how successful they've been with DBT, and rightfully so. Where I think they want to drive the consumption pieces through job creation. The EV charging piece, she seemed to suggest there'll be announcements which make it easier for entrepreneurs to start EV charging stations. I think they expect to do some job creation there. The whole self-help group thing, and then easy financing on easy terms through PSUs, through quasi-governmental organizations. I'm not so sure the NDA2, given how strong they politically feel, is going to resort to standard welfare spending. I think NREGA, from what I understand, in the small print, there is a modest uptick in NREGA spending, but nothing in the budget which suggests that there will be helicopter drops of cash. It seems more around the lines of, we'll give DBT where it's necessary and required, but beyond that, we'll create schemes which make it easy to create jobs rather than do helicopter drops of cash.
Sure. So you talked about EV transition, you talked about affordable housing, and you said you're invested. So are there any direct plays around these, or it's in and around ancillaries, that is how you bet?
So let's start with the housing piece, right? So FM is talking about middle class housing. There'll be both benefits or encouragement given for build and for buying.
Yeah.
And the PMAY Grameen piece, where I think they're talking about 2 crore more dwellings to be created over 5 years, right? So there's obviously the entire building material space, and I think for several years we've been invested in names such as Pidilite, Astral Poly, Asian Paints. More recently, we have purchased Cera Sanitary Ware in our small cap portfolio. So there's a whole host of well-run building material companies. I think the affordable housing financiers also are going to become increasingly relevant. If you noticed, Mahalakshmi, over the last year or so, mainstream mortgage finance has grown at around 25%, whereas affordable housing finance has only grown at 15%.
Right.
I think that flips on the other side of the election if this scheme that FM is talking about has legs in it. Because as I travel around the country, I meet auto rickshaw drivers, vegetable store owners, barbers, rickshaw pullers who are buying houses using PMAY. Right, so in affordable housing, we have Awas as our main investment, but there's a whole bunch of affordable housing plays. I think more will list, and I think people should look out for this theme. I think this will become a defining theme in the years ahead. Affordable housing using a PMAY. PMAY gives you typically 2 lakhs to the buyer, and then the rest of it comes from a AHFC. UPI means even a rickshaw puller can now show a 30-page bank statement. On the energy transition theme, we've invested in Eicher Motors because I saw that Volvo Eicher, the stock market didn't have appreciation for it, and Volvo Eicher was steadily gaining share in the heavy end of the CV space. Volvo Eicher has also set up a new plant in MP for EVs. Beyond that, whilst we don't have Tata Motors, TAMU also has a well-developed EV program, and I'm sure in due course the two-wheeler companies will also start focusing more on EV than on ICE. There's a whole host of ancillaries to look at with regard to EV. We haven't invested in any as yet, but I think the ancillary space will also become interesting, because ancillaries, remember, will not just supply Indian auto OEMs with EV parts, but potentially supply the global auto majors with EV parts as well. So I think plenty more to come here. The more support the government gives to the energy transition now, the more benefits we get in the years ahead, right? And looking more generally beyond these two themes, right? The whole theme around women empowerment. Yeah. It's interesting. The FM, the PM, the Chief Economic Advisor, they're all focusing on the theme. Why are they doing it? Because more women vote in elections now than men. And I don't think that's going to change, at least in the rest of my career. So I think we can safely look forward to the July budget having even more emphasis on putting money in women's purses, whether through job creation schemes or through direct benefit transfer. Historically, so far, we've invested in Nestle, Trent and Titan. These have been, Nestle and Titan have been long-standing investments. Trent has been a more recent investments. Rainbow Medicare in South India is in our small cap portfolio. It's a maternity and childcare hospital focused on 17 locations in South India. But I think the woman theme will also become very big. So therefore, if I look at the next 5 years, right, energy transition, women empowerment, and affordable housing become 3 big themes to invest into. Quick disclaimer, I'm invested in all of these stocks through our PMS schemes. So are my parents, and so are our 9,000 clients.
Right. So in housing finance, so you will not play it through mainstream financials. You're talking about essentially. That's
right, because mainstream financials focus on more affluent people, whereas the FM's focus is, the government's focus is on low-income housing. So 10 lakhs, 10 to 30 lakhs, I would say, is the home loan ticket size that the government would be focused on.
Right. Would you bet on any developers, for example, Macrotech? I mean, they do a bit of that, right? So
yeah, the only challenge with developers as a play on affordable housing is there's no barriers to entry there, right? Almost anybody with a little bit of land and a wherewithal to get the relevant regulatory clearances can become a developer. And if you notice, even today, even in the middle of this crazy boom in real estate developer share prices, you open the cash flow statements of the developers, they're not making any money. And the reason they don't make any money in terms of cash flows is there are dozens of them in any location pursuing the same customer. The customer obviously benefits, but investing in real estate developers in India is a very tricky task because of the lack of barriers to entry.
And EVP push, again, you're saying you will go through the auto ancillary route.
So we've done one OEM, we've done Eicher Motors as an OEM. We're looking for more ANC plays because, as I said, on the OEM piece, the challenge is you invest in a OEM, you got to also deal with the fact that the ICE piece will die,
right,
and the EV piece will rise, and you're constantly trying to juggle the two.
Yeah.
Whereas if you focus on auto ANCs who specialize in EV ANCs,
right,
then you don't have to worry about the ICE piece dying on them.
Right.
Now, there aren't that many, but there are a few, and I think that will go public.
Yeah.
And therefore, EV through ANC might be a better way to go about it than EV through OEM.
Right. And this green energy push, I mean, do you play this at all? She talked about, increase in viability gap funding. She talked about a huge expansion plan, coal gasification, and so on. So
look, I think rooftop solar will potentially become a very interesting thing. It's almost similar to building materials. Just as a Pidilite or an Astral Poly has been able to build barriers to entry in its, in adhesives and in pipes, a well-managed rooftop solar company could potentially do the same. We haven't spotted any in the stock market yet, but I think if there's a big scheme around rooftop solar, given that much of the country is drenched with sunshine for much of the year, this looks like a potent theme. And I'm sure there'll be private equity investors who are right now looking for or perhaps making rooftop solar investments, which will debut in the stock market in the next 2 to 3 years.
Right. So this is pretty much the story of today, Saurabh. But overall, if you were to just look, a little out, maybe the rest of the year, how does the market look to you? What are the forces? What are the counter forces? What are the triggers you are watching over the next 3 months?
I think 3 big things to look out. Firstly, the situation in the Middle East is tricky, and I don't think there's any other word around it. People that we have never heard of have blocked the Red Sea and the Suez Canal.
Yeah.
They seem to have it's not a situation where Washington DC can call up a government and negotiate with them. These are basically wild people, rebels who are hijacking ships, sending drones with missiles on it, right? So it's a very tricky situation. You're dealing with supranational terrorists basically, and they're blocking the most critical freight route in the world. So I think it's a tricky situation. I don't have an easy answer. If the Middle Eastern situation calms down, I'm pretty sure bond yields will come off, inflationary pressures will come off, you'll see equities rally further, but I'm no expert on whether the Middle Eastern situation will calm down or not. I think the second call, in a way linked call, but let's think of it as a distinct call, is when does the Federal Reserve start cutting? Last night, the Federal Reserve chair said that the rate cuts are going to come later rather than sooner. Yet they have elections to contend with. So if the rate cuts come by the middle of the year in the United States, that makes it easier for the RBI governor to cut, which in turn gives fillip to both our banking sector stocks and to equities in general. And the third piece to look out for is the whole issue around China's economic, there's no other better word. Decline is a polite way to put it. Let's just say call it China's economic decline, and India's filling up that vacuum. I think the NDA2 has capitalized on it brilliantly so far. And my reading, Mahalakshmi, is the July budget. There'll be more tangible steps, such as PLI, such as FAME, which will allow India to step into the void, the colossal void created by China's decline. If China's decline continues and India keeps capitalizing, all power to us. So the fairy tale situation for us will be by Diwali, the Middle East has quietened down, crude prices are at 70, the Indian 10-year bond yield has a 6, perhaps a 6.5 handle to it. The Federal Reserve has started cutting, and China continues to have Evergrande type giant real estate developers going belly up. That combination could be very powerful for the stock market in our country.
So what is it that you expect could happen in the next budget that couldn't have been done in this budget?
I think naturally.
But it's just that because I'm just thinking about it, backwards, that if you were to keep 5.1% as your target fiscal deficit for next year, then what would you do differently in the next budget?
So my reading is there will be tax changes that will be coming through in July. I think because the elections are around the corner and because the PM has promised a vote on account, the FM held back on the tax announcement. I'm pretty sure there will be announcements on taxes in July. There'll also have to be announcement on disinvestment. Right? There's been several misses on disinvestment for several years. Obviously, before the elections, there's no point trying to disinvest a big PSU, just not tenable. But I think there will be announcements on disinvestments, and I'm pretty sure that early on in the 5-year cycle, the NDA will try to push through whatever disinvestments they can. And I think the third area where we are likely to get announcements in July are with regard to trade treaties. So again, I don't think it'll be likely that the government will sign trade treaties this side of the elections, but it's pretty likely that on the other side of the elections we will get, hopefully UK, I think Switzerland is also around the corner. So those are the three things so tax changes, some tax cuts for the middle class, counteracted with tax hikes elsewhere, trade treaties and disinvestment are the three things that we can consider for the July budget, which there wasn't, the occasion for announcing today.
And your top 3 themes for now, for the next 6 months, in fact, for the rest of the year would be?
I would say the big transition we will see, and the FM alluded to it, actually she actually pointed to it clearly. She's saying that, look, we the government have done enormous public sector capex.
Right.
Public sector capex has gone up 30-35%, 3 budgets in a row. This time, as she announced the 10% hike, she's saying now the focus is on the baton passes to the private sector. So we at Marcellus are trying our best to identify private sector capex plays. So far we made investments, Mahalakshmi, in Shanti Gears, in RHI Magnesita, in SKF, which makes these ball bearings. We've invested for several years ago in Grindwell, Norton and Stay Investment. So private sector capex, theme number 1. Secondly, this whole focus on Nari Shakti, this will run. There's a massive constituency that is aspirational, well-educated, increasingly finding income and employment, and it'll be logical for the politicians to cater to that. As I said, so far
you're saying Nestle, but is there anything that is more focused, that you could play? Titan definitely is one.
So similarly, Trent, the main engine is women. Rainbow Medicare, it's maternity and pediatric care. We're looking for more such plays, but so far this is what we've identified. In a way, if you were to sort of think about it, Nykaa, Mamaearth, or FSN Commerce, Mamaearth, these are women-focused plays. I just wish they made a little bit more money and make it easier for us to invest. So if we see more such plays, if a Nykaa starts generating cash flow properly, if a Mamaearth starts generating cash flows properly, those sorts of plays. Because what's very interesting is many of the needs of women are being intuited and catered to better by women entrepreneurs than by male entrepreneurs. And perhaps it's obvious to someone like you, but for people, middle-aged men like me, that's a revelation that women entrepreneurs cater to the needs of other women better than middle-aged men can. And we're certainly looking forward to finding more such companies. But I think this will be a structural theme. What do women want to buy? Because they'll have more and more money. By the way, the RBI data now shows women have more money in their bank accounts in urban areas than men. And women have more bank accounts than men, right? So if we join the two, it's pretty powerful. And I'm sure the powers that be in Delhi have clocked that women have more jobs, more bank accounts, and more money in those bank accounts than men. And we as the stock market are trying to catch up with them. Right. And the third theme, as I was saying, energy transition. Massive theme for our country. We don't have to replicate the mistakes of China and build a huge ICE machine. The quicker we transition to EVs, the better. And if our EV ecosystem is efficient enough to become an exporter, then it also becomes a creator of jobs for the country. As I said there, Eicher Motors so far has been our investment because the VECV piece and the fact that VECV has got an EV piece going. But there are plenty of other EV investments we need to research in Marcellus as we try to capitalize on the energy transition.
All right, cool. That's all. Thank you so much, Saurabh. 3 good themes, and this woman is definitely a new thing, and we'll keep watching this space and looking out for companies that cater especially to women.